With respect to the starting up a project process, Agile approaches focus heavily on the product delivery rather than project management methodology. And Agile frameworks usually do not have upfront planning, but there are some who do acknowledge the need for upfront planning, because in every project, some upfront planning is really needed. It is just that in an Agile environment or an Agile working environment, too much of upfront planning is not needed, meaning too detailed upfront planning is not needed. And in many cases, it is assumed that before the delivery work begins in an Agile manner, the upfront planning and work is already done. However, when an organization is more mature with Agile, then they usually have developed customized upfront processes for planning and others before they venture into this Agile endeavor. There are two concepts that occur frequently in Agile as part of starting up a project process. These can be very valuable to be applied. And the first one is the project chartering or visioning. This is used to gain a basic understanding of the project. It's a brief visual process using bullet points and simple formats in terms of what is the project aiming to do, what is the project vision. And then there is also typically a sprint zero or the discovery phase. But sometimes it is viewed as a burden and not necessary, because anyway, the missing information will emerge afterwards. Sprint zero could be, for example, to get the business case approved or ready some equipment, etc. And Agile always favors emergent planning and empiricism, meaning use the recent or past experience to work ahead and also plan for a shorter distance, for a shorter horizon, rather than for a long duration. For the longer duration, have a higher level plan, and for shorter durations, more detailed plans. And be ready to modify the plan whenever necessary. So upfront planning should be minimal, but there is a need to be adaptive. And there should be sufficient planning as well, so that risk is managed, because there can be more risk in more complex projects. Agile projects usually begin with creating a feature backlog or a user story backlog. This backlog must be created early to define the scope and assess viability within constraints. And that's why we have the project backlog in PRINCE2 Agile. And when it comes to directing a project process, this is usually done by a product owner in Agile environments. Again, it depends on the number of teams. And if it's a single team, a small team, then there's one product owner. If there are multiple Agile delivery teams, there are multiple product owners. And therefore, we have an overall product owner. And we call this role in PRINCE2 Agile as the chief product owner. Then after this, make sure you're covering section 3, part 3 of the foundation course for PRINCE2 Agile version 2. And the section 3, part 3 in the foundation course, it covers the initiating a project process, which has 2 workshops, the project initiation workshop and the project kickoff workshop. Be familiar with that completely. And then the activities of initiating a project, namely agree tailoring requirements, agree the 9 management approaches, establish project controls, prepare the project plan, prepare the full business case, assemble the PID, and request project authorization. So these are the various topics you will become familiar with in that section. And only then move forward to further information about the Agile context of this process here. So the project manager will need to collaborate with project assurance to make sure that the components within the PID, they meet the project board or business needs. And approval may be obtained for the entire PID lot in one go, or maybe piecemeal, depends on what the board prefers. In Agile environments, initiation is much lighter and flexible as compared to traditional projects. And a product vision and a prioritized feature backlog should be created. Do differentiate between the project vision, which was done in the starting up, project, and whereas this is product vision, because there's more clarity on the product when some more detailed thinking is done. There should also be emphasis on iterative delivery for the product based on feedback and emerging requirements. There is more frequent stakeholder communication that should be planned for in this process, so that during delivery, the communications are happening informally more frequently, so that there is continuous commitment and alignment to the project objective or vision and the product vision as well. And should be focus on risk identification and stakeholder engagement in every iteration. And as the project moves forward into future iterations, there is a lot more focus toward product delivery and refinement, because by then there's a sort of habitual way of working established, and the team becomes more comfortable and gains more focus on the product work. As we know, there is less upfront planning in Agile, and there is no concept of formal decision gates because things have to be more responsive as compared to traditional projects, and there's less bureaucracy. Decisions have to be made as and when needed, quickly as well. But still, it's good to use PRINCE2 Agile for managing projects that constitute Agile way of working. Further, you should now become familiar with Section 3, Part 4 of the Foundation Version 2 course for PRINCE2 Agile. And that is where two processes are covered: controlling a stage and managing product delivery. In controlling a stage, essentially there is the progress review workshop and the project retrospective workshop, and it has activities such as authorizing a work package, evaluating work package status, receiving completed work package, evaluating the stage status, capturing issues and risks and taking corrective actions, escalating issues and risks, and reporting highlights. So there are several activities in the controlling a stage process. And then we have the managing product delivery, wherein there are several activities such as accepting a work package, executing a work package, and evaluating a work package, and notifying work package completion. And there are two workshops, namely the team planning workshop and team retrospective workshop. Having done that, you can proceed further in this practitioner course and get to know a little bit more about the controlling a stage process and managing product delivery process. In Agile way of working, while we have the stages in PRINCE2, in Agile we have the equivalent known as a time box. It can be a release, an iteration, or an increment. And typically a single release or a single iteration or increment may involve multiple teams. And if it's a single team, then a product owner or product manager is involved. In case of multiple teams, we need somebody like a overall product owner. In PRINCE2 Agile, we name them as the chief product owner. They focus on the feature delivery, not authority on the people, because everybody will eventually have a line manager. But these product owner roles, be it a chief product owner or product owner, these are not line management, these are product focus roles. And in PRINCE2 management, project management, there is ongoing project viability that is checked at the end of each stage. And whereas in Agile way of working, there is more frequent delivery. So there has to be appropriate governance and alongside product delivery. When we have multiple Agile teams in a slightly larger project, then Scrum of Scrums is typically used. It's quite popular. It facilitates information flow between the different Agile product teams and working together on any escalated issues, dependencies among team features that they are working on, and so on. But Scrum of Scrums doesn't provide control as such. So PRINCE2 Agile can be very useful there, where we can have the workshops from these processes, particularly the controlling a stage process. Its workshops the progress review workshop and the team and the project retrospective workshop, these can be very useful to bring various Agile teams together. And this is where the product owners will report to the project manager and at the project level, and at the team level, and at the project level, the project manager reports to the project board in terms of status and ongoing risks and issues. When it comes to the managing product delivery process of the individual agile teams, Agile emphasizes both product delivery method and the management of delivery. So frameworks such as Scrum, its focus is on the managing product delivery and not performing the delivery. Scrum doesn't include engineering or delivery practices, but if you look at extreme programming, XP, that framework is primarily a delivery practice, but the management elements in there are minimal. So it is important for people and managers and leaders to be aware of agile concepts, behaviors, and techniques, and use them appropriately, understand them appropriately. So management practices organize, guide, and control the delivery work. And delivery practices create the products or sub-products like performing coding, testing, etc. And sometimes there are combined practices which do both delivery and management. So this should be clearly identified as to which delivery practice is being used. For example, XP, and which management practice is used, such as Scrum. And balanced governance is essential, and integrate all these methods together properly. Having done that, you need to now become familiar with Section 3, Part 5 of the Foundation Version 2 course of PRINCE2 Agile. And that's where we have the two more processes, managing stage boundary and closing a project, their activities and workshops. In the managing stage boundary, we have the following activities, such as preparing the next stage plan, preparing the exception plan, update the project plan, update the business case, evaluate the stage, and requesting the next stage. And it has the release planning workshop for the initiation stage and release planning workshop for every subsequent stage. And then when it comes to closing a project, then we have the activities, mainly preparing planned closure, preparing premature closure, confirming project acceptance, evaluating the project, and requesting project closure. And then we have just one workshop, which is the project closure workshop. And from there on, you can proceed further in this course to understand the agile context, meaning some more agile considerations for these processes. The managing stage boundary process, the foundation course tells us it's about ensuring ongoing project viability at the end of each stage, except in the last stage. So it's a formal checkpoint, or it enables a formal checkpoint to review progress and to decide whether to continue the project or to stop the project. Of course, that decision is eventually made by the directing a project process, but the information for that process is provided by this managing a stage boundary process. And if the value diminishes in the agile way of working, then the delivery cycle of release may be stopped. If the effort is more than the benefit, or if there is more opportunity cost, then maybe there are other opportunities to pursue, then the project may be stopped. So such decisions are made often at the end of the iteration or release. So this process, similar to major release review process, it assesses the value delivered, the team performance, process effectiveness, product quality, risk exposure, and next stage planning. And in PRINCE2 Agile, uses predefined stage boundaries for structured review, whereas Agile relies on real-time feedback loops and adaptive decision-making. So if we leave aside PRINCE2 and PRINCE2 Agile and typically work in the Agile way of working using other methods and practices, then there are differences between those ways of working, those methods of working in Agile versus the PRINCE2 Agile way of working. And there are similarities as well. It's just that PRINCE2 Agile puts a more improved structure to everything. When it comes to the Agile considerations for closing a project process, In Agile, the closure is a much simpler activity because handovers are happening regularly rather than only at the end of a typical traditional project. Um, Collaborative handovers happen into operational use, and therefore formal end stage activities are also less. And predefined milestones are very seldom, rare in Agile way of working. It's more the real-time value assessment as and when the customer wants it. There may be certain points, of course, milestones in Agile way of working as well, but there is more value-driven assessments. Typically, the more Agile teams will perform frequent, seamless product delivery into operations, and the ease of transition will reflect the process maturity and team agility. Post the transition, the continuity ensures smooth handover of unfinished tasks, enhancement requests, and known issues. What this means is when the handover is being done into operations, which can happen regularly and a much final one at the end of the project, um, the transition continues for some more time to make the operations team aware of unfinished issues and risks, and what enhancement requests were in the pipeline but not delivered yet, and any known issues with the product which can be useful for the operations team to know and their support teams to be aware of. Therefore, there can be an operational backlog which can be created by the project and handed over to the operations.